Hey, can you all see me? Are we live?
Yeah.
Hey, how y'all doing? What's up, everybody? My name is Erica Douglas. Thank you for that wonderful, warm welcome, Justin. I am so excited to be participating in the first STEM Success Summit. I think this is an amazing platform, and I'm just so grateful to Nehemiah for involving me and just all of the founders of this amazing, wonderful forum. And, let's do it. Do it for STEM. So let's get started. So I'm just going to go ahead and, all right. Are we here? Okay. So let me just try to start. So if this is your first time kind of being introduced to who I am, what I do, you're going to learn a lot today about the beauty industry. So cosmetic science is definitely a field that a lot of people don't know about. But if you think about just how STEM relates to pretty much anything in our lives, what we often do not think about are all of the jobs and fields that come to, that are required to make a lot of these consumer goods come to our shelf, whether it be like food, beauty, automotive, of course, like tech and like the hardware, like building physical goods. And so today I want to talk about my experience of being kind of one of those people behind the scenes, the people who often don't get a lot of the praise, but are often the ones kind of driving the ship from behind the curtain. So today I'm going to talk to you about being the brains behind the brands. And this is honestly a story of brains, brands, and bringing sexy back to business B2B service model. So what we mostly know, and when I say B2B, that means business to business. And so what we mostly know is that B2C, which is where you see the brands, but what is happening behind the scenes are all the companies that support that brand, and those are considered B2B business relationships. So just let's see, where are we going? Let's see. All right. So let me reintroduce myself. Okay. So as I mentioned, I'm a cosmetic chemist. My background is actually in chemical engineering. I've been in the industry for almost 15 years now. Oh my God, I'm old. Oh my, that really just dated me. But I actually grew up in like the old school soft sheen days where it was like Carefree Curl and Wave Nouveau and, and really learned about the industry from my mom being involved in the soft sheen products company. And so that was where I was introduced to cosmetic science. At that point, eventually I ended up going to Organic Root Stimulator. Most people probably know the brand as ORS, where I was the director of research and development. And I was able to really learn most of what I know about this industry working under an amazing entrepreneur, Black entrepreneur named Gary Gardner, who is pretty much the godfather of all things Black hair care. I also ended up going to get my MBA at Kellogg, and that was ultimately because I was learning about the entire industry and not just, and understanding that it's not just about products or like the actual formulation of products, but that there are these other factors that really will determine whether a product was successful. So that was kind of my aha moment to say, hey, I might need to go understand the business side of this industry. And then that led to ultimately me becoming an entrepreneur with NC Group, which is a company that I'm currently the founder and CEO of, and I'll tell you more about that later. And where most people know me from is these social media streets. And most people don't even know my government name, which is Sister Science, or most people know me as Sister Scientist and don't even refer to me as my government name. I think it's hilarious. But that also is a sign that you have a strong brand, and we'll kind of talk about that later. So that's who I am, and let's get into it. So first of all, let's talk about what exactly is a cosmetic chemist. So a cosmetic chemist is pretty much the person who's in the lab, mixing all the stuff, making the formulas come to life. So pretty much what the traditional process is, and this doesn't necessarily apply to every company or every brand, but usually there's like a marketing team somewhere and they're saying, hey, they work for a brand and they're saying, hey, we want to launch a product. Or there could be an entrepreneur, just somebody with a really great idea, and they're trying to bring that product to life. It's my job to figure out the ingredients or chemical components of that product, how to make it work, how to make sure it's safe, how to make sure we can keep the cost in the right place. And then ultimately, what most cosmetic chemists don't necessarily go to this scale of it, but being a chemical engineer, I've been able to take it to the next step, which is working on the manufacturing side of the business, which is like the scale up. So now we have a formula from the lab. How do you mass produce that and ensure its quality and maintain the same specs in the same format that was approved in the lab? So that's a whole other process that tend to, in most bigger companies, tend to be separate. But my core, oh, sorry, that's my cat. But my core, the core of what I do really combines both of those worlds for budding entrepreneurs. So one thing you have to understand, and what I think a lot of people don't really see or understand, is that there are kind of these two different worlds. So you see all these brands on the shelf, right? And some of these brands you're probably familiar with. But there are these large multinational conglomerates, such as like Unilever's, the P&G's, the Revlons, the L'Oreal's of the world. These are big companies that own a lot of brands. And because they are, Fortune 500 billion-dollar companies, they own manufacturing. And so some cosmetic chemists will work under these banners, and there are multiple brands within this category. So like Dove is owned by Unilever, Kiehl's is owned by L'Oreal, Cream of Nature, I'm sorry, I'm saying it backwards. Unilever owns Dove, L'Oreal owns Kiehl's, Revlon owns Cream of Nature. You may be familiar that Unilever recently bought Shea Moisture. And MAC is also another word, is under Estee Lauder. And so under each of these brands, you might have a whole bunch of chemists just for those brands. They never see marketing in some cases. They never see sales or operations. And like, it's such a big company that literally all you do is work in that lab and work on a very specific brand. Now you have like the other side of the business where a number of the smaller brands are actually independent, but you might think they make it look like they're making these products in their kitchen, or that they are, in a place where they can, where they're like kind of behind it. But the secret is that they're actually hiring private label companies or contract manufacturers to pretty much manufacture their products. And in some cases actually create the formulas. And as brands tend to grow, they tend to rely on these contract manufacturers more and more. So they might start off with a product, they were making in their kitchen, and selling at a garage sale or the farmer's market. But when these brands really start to blow up, you have to have scalable infrastructure that can pretty much keep up with demand. And so you have a number of private label manufacturers that are actually the largest employers of cosmetic chemists, because there are more of these private label manufacturers than the manufacturing companies at, you know, L'Oreal or Unilever, the bigger brands. So a lot of times people who ask about how do I get in cosmetic chemistry are often saying, oh, I want to work for Dove, or I want to work for Cream of Nature. But those are small brands within a bigger organization. It's actually easier to go find employment at one of these contract manufacturers. And the thing is, they're making multiple brands. So a lot of times, like, you see you might be familiar with some of these brands. And those brands are manufacturing their products at the same company because of proximity, because they might be experts in a certain category. But what's the beauty of working at one of these contract manufacturers is that you touch a lot of different brands. You're not necessarily in a box. So you're not just focused on the needs of one brand, which might be you have to stay within the confines of, you know, this box, but you might be able to work on a hair brand one day, a skin brand another day, makeup brand another day. And so I always recommend to people who are interested in getting into cosmetic science to look for employment at these types of manufacturers, because that's where you will get a breadth of experience on a number of different things, which will create more value to your professional career overall. So moving right along. So I kind of want to format this in kind of like telling you my story and how I even got into it, because the thing is, most people have never heard of this. And the reason is because it's a very good old boys network. Very few people knew about this field, and they were recruiting within their own kind of their own networks. And so Sister Scientist has been all about kind of breaking down those barriers and really recruiting more people who look like me to be involved. So let's just start with the early years. So a lot of people ask, like, were you always into this? And I'm actually seeing a question right now, were you always a good student? So yeah, I didn't have a choice. If you knew Bertie Brownridge Tucker, my mother, you would know that I was afraid to do anything but be a good student. Like, that was it. She was the motivating factor and the driver of my success. And if I'm completely transparent, I have a lot to owe. I owe a lot to her for keeping me focused and keeping me on point. But I always had this very inquisitive nature. Like, even as a child, I was all about problem solving and like solving puzzles. And so for me, it was all about how do I figure out solutions. And I was always wanting to be the person who came up with the solutions before somebody else did, or solutions that nobody else thought about. But the thing was, I was also very multifaceted as a child, which I learned was not always the case for a number of students in that had, you know, this ability to be good in math and science. I was also a dancer. I was in the orchestra. And I was kind of like a class clown to some extent. And it really made me stand out amongst my peers. So I always felt like the world of STEM was very constricting, but I was good at it, right? So it's like I kept at it because I truly did enjoy the problem solving aspect of it, but I also never felt like I belonged. So moving forward, somehow I got into Stanford. That was a thing, apparently. And so I trekked all the way from Chicago, Illinois to Palo Alto California, and probably one of the best decisions of my life. Stanford is really at the core of my who I am as a person today, my career. I met some of my best friends there. And also it was, you know, really where I was introduced to more people who were more multifaceted, not just kind of focused on one thing, but could do a whole bunch of other things in different areas. And honestly, it was where I first started questioning whether STEM was what I was supposed to do as a career. Like I was in the chemical engineering program, which was extremely rigorous. But there were days where I just felt like, is this really what I want to do? And so I really questioned that a lot. So upon graduation, it was one of those things where a lot of my advisors were telling me, like, you can, you know, if you're going to pursue this, you got to go all in. You can't do, you know, you can't be a dancer, which I was still dancing in college. You can't be a dancer and run a lab. You can't pursue acting, because I actually really wanted to secretly be an actress. And that was one of the reasons why I went to California, because I thought I would get to Hollywood. Never made it. So a little secret about me. And but they were basically saying, like, there's one path, and that's academia. And in academia, it was like, okay, fine. To be successful, I need to follow this path of academia. What I did, like, what I think really stands out to me now in hindsight was that my options felt limited. Like I knew that wasn't necessarily, it didn't feel like the path I was supposed to be on, but I just felt like it was something that I had to, like, that I was supposed to do, that I built up my entire life to do. And so it was too late to turn back. So I ended up going to Northwestern post undergrad as a National Institute of Health Research Fellow. And this was actually a gateway program into my PhD program. And so I spent a year researching biochemistry and molecular and cell biology. And let me tell you, you know, no shade to any of the academics that are on here, but it was the worst year of my life. Like being in a lab and going to lab meetings and studying one little question that was going to publish a paper that like 3 people were going to read. It just didn't motivate me, but I kept feeling like I have to get through this to be successful or to get to whatever is next. And but it just more and more, it kept becoming hard for me to just even wake up in the morning. And this is like, while I was at Northwestern, I moseyed on over to the school, the Kellogg School of Management, which is the business school at Northwestern, and started running into all these people who were engineers but were in business school. And this was like a concept that I never really was introduced to. And so I started hanging out with them, and I stopped hanging out with a lot of the people who were in my lab. And it was like that first moment where I realized, like, man, I found my tribe. Because I'm in lab meetings talking about, like, how are we going to make money off of this? So we found this great, you know, new chemical structure, new biological construct. When we making money? And like people were laughing at me, like, oh, we're just going to write a paper. And I was like, that's boring. And I mean, like, we just gonna keep it 100. Like, we're fam, right? So when I found kind of my tribe in the business school, it made me realize there were a whole other options of careers, still STEM focused, but with more tangible results. Like I wanted something where I could see what my work, see the work that I had put in and like see the results from it. I love the concept of understanding that I worked on something and then like one of my friends bought it, or that there was a commercial about it, and being able to think, I remember when that was just an idea. And so it was kind of that introduction that made me which helped me to come across organic root stimulator, which was at the time one of the premier brands in Black hair care. And I was recruited into this company as an entry-level chemist. And people thought I was crazy for leaving my program. Like at Northwestern, my mom gave me a hard time. Definitely my instructors were like, why would you leave? Like, nobody leaves this program. And I was just like, I gotta go. I had to trust my gut. And it's like the first time I think I ever quit something. But what I learned in that was like, sometimes it's not necessarily quitting is a good thing if it's leading you to your purpose. And for so long, I think I didn't really understand that, but I just knew it felt right. And in hindsight, there are a lot of things. I mean, let's be real. There are a lot of things we should have quit probably sooner than we did. Relationships, talk about it. Eating, we all have a special relation. We all may go overboard in eating too much. Just things like that where you're just like, you stay in it too long. But this was the first time where I truly felt like I was on the path to what I really wanted to do. And so getting into this industry really made me understand what I loved about it and how it really fit my personality was that cosmetic chemistry isn't just about science. It is 50% science and 50% art. And it's because as a chemist, yes, you have to make it work. Yes, it has to be stable. Yes, you have to do all the testing. There is a lot of scientific processes that go behind developing a formula, but understanding the consumer and his or her needs and making and being innovative in how you bring products to market and thinking outside the box to meet the needs of all these different people. And it's very qualitative. There's not just one answer. Really makes it the intersection of science and creativity. And that was the first time where I felt like I was in a world where I got to use all sides of my brain, where like all of my senses and skill sets were being used and where I could ultimately be myself. So I ended up staying there for about 8 years. And right around that time, I ended up going to McMaster Carr because I started to get the idea for my current startup that I'm operating, and it required understanding operations better. So not a lot of people know who McMaster Carr is or the company, but they're very skilled in industrial supplies and being able to deliver small quantities very quickly, very efficiently to pretty much the entire manufacturing industrial category or manufacturing community. And so I actually went there to really learn the operation sides of things. So that's kind of my background and my professional experience. And during the course of being at ORS, I learned that I had to find my superpower. And so I didn't really understand what that was, but what I learned it to be was who I was uniquely, and my experiences really spoke to my ability to perform at a higher level than some of my counterparts because they didn't have the shared experiences that I had. And I'll explain that. When I first came to ORS, they're all men in the lab and they're all bald. And we're sitting here making women's hair products. So the irony in that was just crazy to me. And, and although I was kind of new to the field, it was interesting to be in a place where somebody is telling me how I should feel about my hair or what my experiences are with my hair. And I'm thinking, like, I know I'm new here, but I'm sorry. Mr. Bald Man, that I think I know a little bit more about the experience of getting a relaxer or struggling to detangle my hair than you do. And I don't need you to mansplain me what I need. And so really what ended up happening was my ability to understand the consumer and my ability to understand the technical side of the business was something that was very unique. I was in an office where it was an entire marketing team of Black women, amazing Black women who were extremely successful and important in building the ORS brand. And then I'm in a lab with men who just they understood chemistry and how to formulate very well. And I learned a lot from them, but there was just a gap. And so what I ended up finding out was that my superpower was being a bridge, being able to translate the technical aspects of formulation and innovation to marketing, and then taking marketing's concepts and being able to translate it back to R&D. And that helped us to innovate faster. It helped us to be able to just have shared experiences that it was just kind of like I was the translator. And it became something that I realized just was not common. And I was like, why isn't this more common? And honestly, it's because there weren't and still aren't enough women in this field. Yet the primary consumer of beauty and personal care products are women. And I think that's crazy. So what I learned was being the consumer of these products was important was helpful in developing those ultimately really great products that ended up taking over the category. And if you have to have the consumer's voice at the very beginning of research and development, otherwise you're just kind of guessing. But being able to have her voice or his voice in the room when you're innovating and developing makes a world of difference. And that's why even today in like today's social media era, that's why we're seeing more consumers really getting into, building their own companies to address the needs that they haven't found solutions to, which is great. So, we are the consumers are often the best innovators of their category. So what happened around 2011, 12-ish was there was this renaissance of Black women starting these hair care brands, right? So you knew about Carol's Daughter and Miss Jessie's and Oyen Handmade, and these were women who were really doing something unique and owning they were owning and embracing their natural hair textures, which was like something, unheard of in mainstream Black America. And it was something that was really going against the relaxer, which at the time, ORS was the #1 relaxer brand. And so what was happening was, one, there are a few things. ORS was acquired by a very big conglomerate that's based in India. And so we were going through a change because now we have been taken under the umbrella similar to what happened with Shea Moisture and Unilever. ORS was then acquired by a similar company overseas. And so things were starting to change from internally, but then also the category itself started to change. And I started to see this and really wonder, how are we going to keep up with what's going on here? And so all of a sudden I started getting all these calls because, like I said, there aren't a lot of Black women chemists in this field. And I started getting all these calls from people that were starting these brands that were like, I need help. I'm in Whole Foods, or I'm making this product and I just got an order from Target. I need help to scale up. And so I try to pass some of these people along because it was a conflict of interest. I was like, I can't help you. I work for a competitor, but let me see if I can pass you along to somebody. And what they kept saying was, I work with a lot of these manufacturers, or these manufacturers don't want to work with me. They keep giving me stuff that is not really addressing the needs that I'm trying to meet, and they're not really understanding what I'm trying to do. I need somebody who understands what I'm doing, and I need help kind of breaking down that barrier between, scale these big manufacturers and scaling my company. And so because I couldn't help, I would point them in the direction of some of my colleagues. And I kept finding out that they were not willing to help. And it baffled me. I was like, hey, this woman's on to something. Why won't you help? And I literally had somebody say this to me. An owner of one of the manufacturers that I had been working with, he said, oh, the quantities that they want 1,000 units. He's like, I don't turn on the lights for 1,000 units. And I was like, well, this is true. They're running literally tens of thousands of units in one shift, but who are the people who are going to help these women who have really great ideas to scale their companies so that they can compete against the bigger companies? And what I realized was that there were very few options for these new budding entrepreneurs. And the more I kept hearing that, it was just sad. And I started to realize that the barriers of entry for people who had really great ideas and who were being really innovative were not, but they didn't have the resources or the access to build their brands. But what I realized was that I had the access, I had the network, and I had the expertise that they were looking for. And so it took me a really long a lot of soul searching, but I decided to jump out on a limb and decided that I owed it to this community to use all of the opportunities and access that I had gained over the last 8 years to further advance the category, to help more minorities and women to gain market share in a space that we spend the most dollars in. And so that was really what made me realize that I have a very unique ability that needed to be shared with more brands and more people to help our own community to reach another level. And so I kind of stop here to just say, in your own career, like, what makes you the unicorn? Like, what is your superpower? And a few ways that you can think about that for your own journey is understanding the difference between passion versus skill, and like being able to combine the two. Just because you're good at something doesn't necessarily mean that it's your passion, but when you can marry the two in some way, that is really what is the cusp, the foundation of like your superpower. So start to think about that. And how can your unique experiences and expertise benefit an organization, a community, or some group of people that needs expertise where it can't be commonly found? And the thing is, as a minority in STEM, we bring a lot of experience and understanding that others can't bring to the table. So how can we combine that with our background, with all the academics that we're studying, and using the academic part of what we do, the skill set that we have in STEM, but then bringing that passion to it and making it valuable to a certain organization or community. And also when you're able to marry those two, that's just when you really figure out how to live your best life. Because even on your hardest day, if you have those two things going for you, you will ultimately probably feel fulfilled. Um, so I pause to have you think about that for yourself. So moving right along, um, one of the things that happened was as I started to think about moving on from ORS, uh, we were launching our own natural hair brand. I think you saw it here, Curls Unleashed. And my involvement in the building of that brand went outside of just formulation. I actually came up with the name Curls Unleashed because I was on my own natural hair journey and I was testing all the products on myself. And then when we were launching, as you know, the naturalista consumer is the most involved and informed consumer, and she will question everything. The marketing team was going out into, to engage with these consumers, and they were coming back and saying, Erica, they have questions that we just can't answer. And so they started taking me into into the field with them, and I was able to sit in front of these consumers and answer their questions in a way that they could understand it. And actually, it was the blogging community that gave me my name, Sister Scientist. And it just kind of started to become a thing. Now, the irony of this is that there were a number of naysayers who said, this is nothing. Nobody really cares about this. But this is where branding and making sure that you can communicate effectively what your superpower is to a broader community is important. And why, although we are STEM, we are STEM professionals, it's good to have some business acumen and some marketing acumen kind of mixed in because it can work to your advantage. So I'll kind of show you what became of this. If I can find the next screen. Here we go. Are we good, guys?
Are good. We're good. We got about 15, 20.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you hear us, Erica?
Yeah, I can. I'm trying to share the new screen. There we go. Okay.
My name is Erica Douglas, and I'm a cosmetic chemist. Sister Scientist is a place where women and maybe men can trust information that they're getting about their hair products, about their
Erica, you have to pause real quick and
science is fun. Science is the cornerstone of pretty much everything. What we're going to do is break some things down and debunk some myths. Let's talk about parabens.
Hey, Erica, can you hear?
2A curl and 4 men.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's playing the video. You might have to share a different screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. There you go.
There you go. Yep.
My name is Erica Douglas, and I'm a cosmetic chemist. Sister Scientist is a place where women and maybe men can trust the information that they're getting about their hair products, about their skin products, their makeup. Science is fun. Science is the cornerstone of pretty much everything. What we're going to do is break some things down and debunk some myths. Let's talk about parabens. What's the difference between a 2A curl and a 4B curl? Sulfate free? What the heck is a sulfate? Shrinkage. What is that? It's also a place where I want to share kind of behind the scenes of the industry and what it takes to get all those products on your shelf. You want to stay informed. You want to know more about what's in your bathroom, what's in your purse, what you're putting on your face. Then subscribe to my blog. Because I promise you, science never looked this good. Welcome to the Lab Coat Podcast.
Awesome. All right. So that was the launching of Sister Scientist. And this was after a lot of people told me that I was crazy to leave my job and do this. And but it actually worked out for me. And a lot of that was just being able to find where I could offer that value. And the thing was, there at the time, there were a lot of consumers who had these questions and brands who needed creative ways of answering them because how they were answering them just wasn't cutting it for the consumer. And that was my superpower. So I was able to leverage that into a number of partnerships with brands. I was creating my own content. I was really trying to find a way to get my message out there, that I wanted people to understand that cosmetic science was a thing and that there were people behind these brands that looked like me that were making it all happen, and really understanding everything that came along with that. So that was a vital part in being able to launch my company, MC Group. And the reason why this was extremely important was because as I built that credibility in the streets, it was much easier for me to find clients. So essentially what MC Group was built to do was to be able to service both kind of the smaller brands and being able to take those smaller brands and scale them so that they could become big brands, and so that they could be in a position to possibly be acquired, to possibly, to be able to get on a Target shelf, a Walmart shelf. And so we built MC Group to service the budding entrepreneurial community that we saw rapidly growing in the beauty space. What I did not realize at the time was that there was also value coming from big brands that were looking to innovate, but couldn't innovate as fast because these small companies were like just, running circles around them. And so they started tapping into our services and our expertise to help them to innovate in a way that would make it more accessible to the consumer, because now these consumers were really buying into these stories of the small brands, and the big brands were kind of like, what's our story? We don't have a story. We need a voice. We need help in trying to even understand what she wants now, because she was changing so fast and they weren't keeping up. And so MC Group was born in 2014, and our mission is to provide the strategic growth solutions to aspiring entrepreneurs and established businesses in the beauty and personal care industry. Now, what makes us unique is really the core of kind of what I already told you about, like how I have these interests on not only like the STEM, very technical science side of things, but also on the business and marketing side. And so I found a business partner who was very savvy in the branding and marketing of these brands. I knew the chemistry and the operations of it, and we married the two together, which is like almost unheard of. People go to a manufacturer to get their products made. They might have a chemist somewhere else. They're going to marketing agencies over here, and they have PR and sales somewhere else, and they don't always talk. And so this entrepreneur who might not have experience in the industry is trying to juggle all these things, and it was very hard for them. So we said, what if we brought that under one umbrella to make it more accessible for these entrepreneurs to really get the expertise that they needed, and not just like from a very linear perspective, but from a 360 perspective of how one aspect of your business may affect the other. And so we offer services not only on the product development and manufacturing side of things, but also you can come and get help with your marketing and strategy and business development. And literally, in our first year, we had people knocking down the door. And I think because of the Sister Scientist brand, a lot of people thought we were bigger than we really were. But like we were just trying to fake the funk and keep up with what we had, or what was coming in, because we clearly had found a niche, a need that was not being serviced. And that really is the formula for a great business, is finding an area or a need that is underserviced and then offering an opportunity or a service in that category. And so that's pretty much what we did. And so I was buying used equipment. I was crouching in some warehouse space. It was rough, but we knew we were onto something, and we had to see it through. And so I stop again to say, how can you use your experience to create your dream job? First, establish yourself as an expert. I think there are a number of people in the STEM category that are doing this now. Justin is a great example. Really finding out how you can bring your expertise in to the forefront, especially using like social media, and really branding yourself online so that companies know who you are and what you bring to the table. And then also looking at, what is a business model that could really address a need that is underserviced. And a lot of times people are always like, oh, quit your job and, you're working for the man. But honestly, you can let your 9 to 5 be the setup for your startup. It can be the seed money that you need to get things started, and you can do your side hustle while you continue to get that good check. And so I was actually still working at McMaster Carr when I was working on the MVP for MC to test whether this was a viable model. And I was saving a lot of money, making a good 6 figures, and honestly only living off of a fraction of it because I was building that seed money and kind of like a cushion so that I could ultimately end up doing what I wanted to do. It went a lot faster than I anticipated, but it was because we really did hit on something that people wanted. And then always get your team right. Like, that's important. Again, like, yeah, I can formulate the heck out of some stuff, but like, I couldn't read a P&L, and I hated doing contracts. So having experts in their various fields that are important to the infrastructure and building a solid foundation for your business is important. So make sure that you tap into other experts in their lanes that will become your team. I like to call them your boardroom. And so that's also very important. So in 2014, we were sharing a space of like 3,000 square feet. We had one machine that we like literally were pumping. And we might have been able to do, if we were lucky, we could do 500 units in a day. Also, focus on creating value and not money. I think a lot of people always think about the money first, or like, oh, is this going to make me money? But when you find your value proposition, that you push on that hard and continue to show how it can create value for somebody, because that's what people pay for. They don't pay for a service, they pay for value. They pay for something that they can't do. They pay for something that they don't have and always wanted. And you have to know where you make the difference. And then that's where you find the money. You want to network. And just that's how you find your tribe. That's how you find people. You'd be surprised how many just random people I found just from conferences or just being in the right place at the right time who ended up being extremely valuable to helping me build MC group. You want to test your service and your pricing models. I recently read something that were saying when you find a place where your customer complains about the price but still pays it, then you found you found that's the right price. So you never want to devalue yourself or your service or your expertise. Try different things, because if you don't, you can often undervalue yourself. And as I discussed, like, find a niche, find the low hanging fruit, and really hit on that hard while you kind of build and grow on that. So next, it was all about scaling. So we knew we had something good, and it was time to scale. And so now that we had identified the problem, we had to figure out how to grow this thing. And so I think by year 2, we were into making seven figures. And that was something that I did not anticipate. And so honestly, we grew too fast. And there were a lot of problems, issues that came up that I'd never even thought about. And I had to kind of pull back, because I started thinking I might be biting off more than I can chew, but I knew that I was onto something. And so this was when I really started having to ask for help from other experts. I really had to focus on what is our value proposition. Like, we're doing a lot, but what can we do to hone in on it and make sure that we're focused on truly delivering value? And I made a lot of mistakes, but some of those mistakes were probably the best setup for my successes. And also what I learned was that nobody's out here using their own money to make money. And so I had to put my life on the line pretty much. And, raise money, go to banks and get money to be able to grow, because you can't make money without money. And what I also learned was ask for money when you don't need money, because that's when they give it to you. When you need money, they don't give it to you. So you want to be ahead of the game when it comes to that. And then just kind of where we are today, 2019, we just had our 5-year anniversary. We now are in a 10,000 square feet facility with 4 filling machines. We can do about 10,000 units in a day and have about 20 employees. So it was definitely a long road, but and some days I want to quit, honestly. But if I really take a minute to step back and look at how far we've come, that's the motivation that kind of keeps me going to keep doing this. Also seeing all the brands that we've been able to bring to market and really help and know that we have an impact in really changing the landscape of beauty and the ownership that is in this market. So that is really what I thrive on and really keeps me going day to day. I love this quote that entrepreneurship is someone who jumps off a cliff and builds a plane on the way down. That's truly what I did. And but the thing was, I had a lot of great people kind of along on the ride with me, and definitely wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for the support of my STEM community, my colleagues that I've worked with in the past, and then also the amazing clients that I have that were just like wanted to support another chocolate face that was in the game. And so I would be remiss if I didn't take the time to thank my tribe for helping me get here. And just to kind of close out, these are a few of the lessons that I learned as an entrepreneur. And I think it's important if you are considering entrepreneurship specifically in STEM, that just because you have the expertise in, your field, you need to know the business side as well. That's like the most important part of like building a company in any space, is that you can have a great idea, but it's all about execution. And so you have to be able to execute in order to be successful, or to be a game changer, or to, to really be able to grow your idea into something scalable. And so these are some of the things that I have learned, often the hard way. And so really take into consideration this list if you are pursuing, kind of going out on your own, or have an idea that you want to start. And I like this picture of me. Yes, that is me sleeping on our conference room table, because it is, this is, entrepreneurship is not for the weak at heart. There are long days and long nights, and you really have to set yourself up for, excuse me, set yourself up, excuse me, for success. And you have to be ready for all the things that are going to get thrown at you. But understanding that what really separates successful entrepreneurs from the ones that are not so successful is perseverance. And it's just being able to get to the other side of that. And yeah, and so sometimes I had to, this is what entrepreneurship really looks like. It's not what you see on the gram. It's not, all the flashy stuff. But honestly, I had more days like this than wins that people see on the gram. And so when you are looking at other people in this space, know that there are stories like this behind them, and that there are no overnight successes. Every overnight success was 10 years in the making. So if you can kind of hold on to that, you will continue to be motivated that you're not alone in this, and that anything is possible if you set yourself up for success. So with that, if you are interested in learning more about the world of cosmetic science, here are a few resources that I can also drop in the Slack channel. And I hope that you have learned a little bit about this industry, have learned from my story, and hope that it's some motivation to whatever your respective field may be, and what your goals and purpose may be. So thank you very much for spending this hour with me. If you want to connect with me further, you can find me on social media. You can also sign up for my newsletter on the website. And if you are in the business of beauty and are thinking of starting a brand, hit us up at MC Group, because that's what we do. So I hope that you have enjoyed this, and I look forward to your questions.